guys, happy Mother's Day. Welcome to a new week. So this is a photo of my mom and I way back when I was just a 12-year-old kiddo. So that is when I was still on, it would be either Ritalin or Concerta. I'd have to actually ask my mom to know. To me, it was all just a blur. She would know the different time frames for that. But you guys can see how super duper, hang on, let me fix all that. How super duper skinny I was back then. That way too skinny. So today we are taking my mom out for lunch. Not super sure what else is gonna happen today. I would like to maybe pick up some measuring cups and some gloves for resin casting if we're in an area where we could do that. And it would be nice to go look at architectural books. So I need to actually make a note of that. But if it's Mother's Day, so if she doesn't want to do that, that's fine. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not trying to be like pushy. Tomorrow is our chill stream, and unfortunately by the time you guys see this, we will have already finished voting. We will have already had the chill stream, but just in general, chill streams are now going to be at 6 p.m. on Mondays because more people come and chat, and that's what makes it fun for me, is hanging out with you guys in the chat. I am streaming on both Instagram and on YouTube, but if you like to chat with me, Joseph is only keeping up with the chat on YouTube. It's a lot easier to keep up with the chat that way. So if you want to just like watch and chill in the background, Instagram could be a good option. If you want to chat and hang out, then YouTube would be the better option because we can keep up with the chat a little bit better like that. If you want to vote in upcoming chill streams, I am going to always try, when feasible, unless I have something specific planned, I'm going to always try to have a poll out Sunday at the latest. Friday would be better, and I'm going to post that literally everywhere and talk about it literally everywhere. So if you follow me on any of the socials, you should see information about the poll if you have a preference. And someone is knocking at the door, so it is go time for me. I'll see you guys later. Hey guys, tomorrow is Monday, and that means we have another chill stream coming up. So I want you guys to vote on what craft we're going to do on Monday. Are we going to make crystals? Are we revisiting resin with some jewelry and gold flakes? Are we painting our own planters since April showers bring May flowers? Or are we doing applique or needle punch embroidery? Comment and let me know. Hey guys, so a friend of mine asked me for some of my recommendations for learning figure drawing and understanding human anatomy using books primarily. And since I was typing it up anyway, I thought I would share my list of favorites with you guys in one concrete place. So I really like the Glenn Villepeu drawing manual. That's how I learned constructive anatomy. That was the first place it actually started to click for me. Actually, that was kind of the first time human anatomy became something that wasn't just trying to memorize bumps. It was remembering constructed concrete forms. So it really simplified anatomy into something that I could understand, and then you hang the muscles on top of that. I started with Andrew Loomis's figure drawing for all it's worth. I still really like it to a degree. It really helps you understand the skeleton, the skeletal forms and proportions, and then you can hang what Glenn Villepeu teaches you about constructing the body itself on top of those forms. So I recommend the two together, basically the beginning of Andrew Loomis's figure drawing for all it's worth, and then all of Glenn Villepeu's drawing manual, very good. I also really like Jack Hamm's Drawing the Head in Figure, not necessarily for how he constructs anatomy as a whole, but how he breaks down individual parts of anatomy, and also how he draws hair, how he explains facial features, how he explains inking hair and facial features, and how he draws the clothes on the body and breaks down the folds. It is really good. I also highly recommend Bern Hogarth's Dynamic Human Anatomy. He's another constructive figure drawing kind of person. If you draw a lot of muscular characters, you're really going to like Bern Hogarth. The way he breaks down the head is very similar to the way I do it. That's where I first started to learn how to do it, and that was further cemented by my classes at SCAD. So those are all books that I really recommend. Most of them are in print. The Glenn Villepeu Drawing Manual falls in and out of print, but if you Google it, you should be able to find a copy of everything. I also recommend How to Think When You Draw. It's a currently 4-book series, usually funded by a Kickstarter, but every time they do a new Kickstarter, you can order all the old books. And I've been following it since book 1, and it's a lot of just kind of general drawing tips. So it might not teach you specifically start to finish how to draw something, but it teaches you how to think about drawing. I wish it went into more depth, but it's kind of a good book for just like picking up, flipping through, and you'll always learn something new from it. I really like Grizz and Norm's Tuesday tips. If you go on Pinterest, you'll see other people repinning their Tuesday tips without crediting them at all. So they're actually pretty ubiquitous, but if you go to, I think, grizzandnorm.com, you should be able to find many of their PDFs there for free. You can also order the book, although that's another one that sadly is in and out of print here and there. I also really like Mia Yuli's stuff. She has an Instagram, she has a Twitter, and you often see people kind of scalping that one, scraping that one for Pinterest content as well. So that's another one that I highly recommend. And it does look like she kickstarted a book. It's Art Tips Collection by Miuli by Kudos Editore, and it's on Kickstarter. So it does look like that book is actually available. I think I have a PDF of it, but I actually don't learn so well anymore from PDFs. I like physical books, so I'll probably be ordering a physical copy. And then I really recommend Manga Materials EN, and this is on Instagram. And there's also like a taco tutorials that I really like, but I was having trouble finding it. So if I do find it, I'll come back with a follow-up. But what they do, and I support their work on Patreon because they freely share these kind of tutorials so that people can teach themselves how to draw. And there's just a lot of like basic figure drawing, way more advanced figure drawing as well, mainly aimed with a manga slant or a cartoony slant. So basically, if you enjoy my channel, you're gonna love Manga Materials _EN. So those are some figure drawing and human drawing and human anatomy tutorials, resources that I highly recommend, that I think you guys will enjoy, and they're really beneficial once you kind of have the brick and mortar understood. And if you're looking for some very simple constructive drawing tutorials where I show you how to not only construct those 3D volumetric shapes, but how to use those to draw anything you can imagine, from objects to animals to people, I've got those kind of tutorials here on the channel. And then when you're finished with those, I recommend you check out some of those resources we were just talking about. So I hope that was helpful. So I apologize for the format. These are recorded to share as shorts on Instagram, on TikTok, and on YouTube, hence the weird format. It's really hard to actually utilize the same footage for both, but I'm working on some really short tutorial snippets that demonstrate just some of the super basic aspects of figure drawing and drawing bodies, especially since my hand tutorials do so much better than everything else I have. I thought this might go really well, go really nicely with it. So I still need to do the voiceover work for it and get it edited down, but I've got the main meat of it done. So I'm looking forward to being able to share it, and I hope you guys are looking forward to seeing the full thing in the correct format. So I received a package from AliExpress today. It includes a bunch of watercolors. I decided to just go ahead and record a standalone haul video, since I feel like some of my bigger hauls get kind of lost in the vlog format. And there's like a swatch portion coming up that, you know, originally I was going to have that just as part of this vlog, but I actually think I'm going to include that with the unboxing anyway. So the Winsor & Newton watercolors that you guys see there, those are going to get their own standalone unbox and swatches, or Chinese Winsor & Newton watercolors, so they handle a little bit differently. I also have the Supervision plant-based watercolors. Those are the ones on the left. Those are going to get their own unbox and swatch. And then I have some more super granulating colors. Okay, friends, so I promised you guys swatches of my new super granulating colors. So these are the original super granulating colors I have. I know this is Cathedral Glass. This is like a brownish green. This is a red and blue. And this, I believe, is like rose ash. So it's kind of a blue and pink. I'm going to re-swatch all these for you guys, so don't worry about that. Up here are the mineral watercolors that I talked about in another unbox and swatch. These are kind of pricey, so I don't have a lot of them. This is Dinosaur Fossil, this is Malachite, this is Vermilion, and then this is Lapis. And I recently ordered and received a bunch of the plant-based, I don't know if they're actually plant-based watercolors. So I kind of look forward to, or I'm definitely looking forward to doing an unbox and swatch video with that. So with these mineral colors, I don't know if it's like with Daniel Smith where they're adding in extra color. To me, it doesn't seem that way. And it also seems kind of a little silly because I think with Chinese watercolors, they generally don't add in additional synthetic colors to like boost the color. So the color you get is kind of the color there is. But I would love to do a head-to-head comparison with multiple mineral watercolor. And I do the air quotes because, again, Daniel Smith, their Primatek colors do have additional color added to them, so they're not just straight up mineral colors. And you know, once you start having doubts about one company, it's hard not to kind of wonder about other companies. So that's why I'm doing the quotes, because I don't want someone coming back and being like, Becca, you said, because it's like, well, the companies say, and I'm just kind of going with that. So what I want to do is I'm going to swatch the 3 new colors. I'm going to fill half pans, and I'm going to re-swatch the old colors. And that way we can kind of see the color lineup I have here. I think they have a few more of the super granulating colors still available, but I'm not trying to buy all of them. I'm trying to buy stuff that I think will be useful in my comic art, because what I like about the super granulating colors is that they can make for some very cool background and emotional effects with not a whole lot of effort. And when you're a comic artist, you are always looking for how to get the most bang for your buck, because at the end of the day, you need that comic to be impactful, you know, within reason. Not every panel should have the same amount of impact. That's not how comics work. But you do need panels that need impact to be impactful. But realistically, most readers aren't spending more than 30 seconds, a generous 30 seconds, on an individual panel. So you got to kind of try to balance like beautiful art that tells the story and art that gets the job done and is evocative, but doesn't eat up all your time. I have here golden green. It is half transparent, so it's what, semi-transparent. What does this out list mean? Light fastness out list. When y'all let me know? Like, my brain is gonna just take that as don't trust this as transparent, especially if they're using kind of a dye sort of base to get, because with the way these seem to work is you have a staining color and you have a granulating color. And I'm assuming the staining color might be something dye based. And do they actually list the pigments? Well, they list them in Chinese, so I can't be upset about that. That is the target market. And this is series 5. Here we have, I think all of them are probably oh no, this is fully transparent. That's kind of surprising. Another outlist color. And this is PR3 and then something else. This one doesn't have any pigment name, and this is a series 3. And then finally we have Blue Gradient. And I'm laughing because like all of these are kind of gradients, but I get what they mean. This is semi-transparent. It is an outlist color again, and it has PB28 and then something else, and it is a series 3. And you guys can watch, if you really want to know about these, you can watch the unbox and swatch for that. I talk about it a whole lot more. So what I want to do is, the first thing I'm going to do, because I want to make a color map for this, because this is going to basically almost fill us up here. So for half of this, I'm going to make my color map. This is the Bao Hang watercolor paper. It's all right. It's a cotton rag paper. It performs decently well. I did the ladybug explosion piece on it, and it didn't like totally crap out on me. It didn't actually. It performed quite well. I threw a lot of layers at it. I don't know why I'm being all weird. It's good. It's a fine paper. Too bad you have to order it from AliExpress. Although if you live in China or somewhere where this is sold, it's not bad, you know. I'd recommend picking it up as a decent cotton rag. Alright, so I am grabbing a silver black velvet brush. I also have a flat brush over here. Oh, I appreciate that it's not just all full of whatever their binder is. I know with their Pro line, they do honey. Okay, and another thing is these typically, ooh, that is a brilliant color. I'm not sure if you guys can see it. That's why I kind of stopped myself, because sometimes my camera just does not. And I have found that with these super granulating colors, you really get the most beautiful color out of a really wet into wet swatch. Although really what's more impressive is usually after they've dried, because usually with this, all the color is still sitting up in that water suspension, and it's not until it dries and it can settle into the divots in the paper that you can really see what that granulation is all about. So next is golden green. Oh. Tube is runneth over again. That was how is this a golden green? This is like teal. This is going to be an interesting one, I think, because like the more color I get, so the gold seems to be, as I'm looking at it, the gold is probably the granulation color and the green is probably the base color. That horrible moment of realization that you wish you had done it in super slow-mo, not hyperlapse. Hyperlapse speeds it up. Come on, Becca. Okay, last is red yellow. It's okay, I'll make it up to you guys. We still got paper here. I gotta be careful not to squeeze on too much. Oh, that's a pretty color. I do not know what is with like me doing the tongue clicking thing. I think that's like from watching too many makeup videos and too much ASMR over the years. In here. Ooh, look at that. Oh, you can see that red. That's gonna be pretty. I mean, that's just fire right there. And as you can see, it squirted itself. And now I have nowhere to put it, because I'm still gonna fill the half pans from these. All right, so in slow motion this time, like I wanted from the beginning, I'm gonna do a big old wet patch here, and I'm gonna dip all the different colors into it. These are pretty dry, not entirely, but you guys can really see how differently they behave when you just apply them to the paper and then try to wash them out a bit to get that granulation, as opposed to when you actually just dab them into a puddle of water. You get such beautiful granulation, such an explosion of color. I mean, that's what originally enticed me with Brusho, and Brusho is very dye based, so it is light, fugitive, and it can be such a pain in the booty to handle. So it's cool that this has a lot of those Brusho fun properties without some of the difficult to control problems. So now I'm gonna go ahead and put them in the half pans. Well, now we figured out how to do it the really hard way. So all that's really left is to go ahead and swatch these onto our map, let that dry, cut it out, and put it in there. And that way we have a handy reference. So for the mineral colors, I'm going to do a straight up swatch. And I think for the granulating colors, I'm going to do a clean water swatch and then dab in the paint so that we actually see what the granulation looks like. And then finally, I'm gonna try to sneak in like a single, like mixed color swatch next to each. And that'll hopefully give me an idea of what the color when mixed together looks like. I mean, some of them are kind of pretty as mixed colors. Like this is just like undersea green. And I am so tempted to try making my own super granulating watercolors by mixing a staining color with a super granulating color and seeing if that works. Although I do think for best results, they probably do need to be mixed together at the time of milling. So that would be a fun project for handmade watercolor artists, maybe. I do think, though, starting with something very finely granulated like a phthalo or a quin or a dioxazine purple is a good start. And then, shoot, you could take any single pigment, super granulating kind of color. So smalt would be an excellent mix-in for something like this. I know that Supervision is not the only company doing these really interesting granulating colors. Daniel Smith has offered several for a while now. I think Paul Rubens is also getting in on it, and I'd really like to try the Paul Rubens ones as well. But I would like to see more US-based companies or companies that do a lot of business in the US. I'd really like to see them try something more exciting and more innovative. Sometimes, as much as I love watercolor, here in the US, it starts to feel very stodgy and like it can only be done one way. And if you don't do it that way, then don't even talk to the companies because they're not interested in hearing from you. But I know that fine art watercolorists are not the only ones buying the materials. They're not the only ones talking about the art supplies. And in many ways, they're not really the ones who are getting new people excited about watercolor. So I'd like to see a little more bravery. I would hate for it to take 20 years and all of the comic artists who do watercolor, our time will have been gone before companies like Winsor & Newton kind of take us more seriously. Alright, so there is my map. And I think it does a pretty good job of, demonstrating the colors in their full form and the colors in their granulating form. And then, of course, at the top we have the mineral colors as well. Could tape it in the top. That would probably be a smart idea, but I can't even close it because these need to finish drying. Actually, all of them need to finish drying. I don't want them to get moldy or turn to soup on me. But these three especially need to finish drying. I am definitely looking forward to the unusual plant-based watercolors that I also ordered from Supervision. And, at some point, I would really like to try making my own dyes with the intention of trying to make watercolors from them. Not to sell, more just as like an interesting hobby, just something to play around with. But when it's just me getting into these kind of troubles and making these kind of messes, it's not as fun as having a partner in crime. It's Monday, and before I get ready for my Making Crystals chill stream, I kind of wanted to check in with you guys regarding the medication, since we've been kind of doing a little bit of making art and talking about having ADHD. I am feeling pretty good about the Ritalin. I'm on 5 in the morning and 5 in the noon, and that seems to work really well for me. I haven't, in general, been having problems with insomnia. Now, last night I stayed up all night binging the, 1994 Annie version of Pride and Prejudice. We'll chalk that up to guilty pleasures and not to insomnia because I was tired, but there was a thunderstorm going on all night, and Bowie's afraid of thunder, so every time it'd start thundering really loud, he'd want in the room, so I'd get up to let him in, and then every time it calmed down, he'd start like scrambling around and trying to cause trouble, because he'd be all, I guess, excited or activated, I don't know, but, so really Bowie kind of kept me up, but I was also watching Pride and Prejudice. Sorry, y'all. I don't know why my throat is so dry. I should go drink me a big glass of water before today's chill stream. So I'm going to be dual streaming it to Instagram Live and to YouTube again. So we'll be doing the horizontal format for YouTube and the weird, awful portrait format that I really kind of struggle with for Instagram Live. That is a hard, when you're demonstrating something, that's a hard format to deal with. But I'll talk about that more in the I Tried It Instagram month-long challenge. Yeah, I'm liking the Ritalin. I don't feel wired. I don't feel overstimulated. I actually feel awake. And I think I talked to you guys about this earlier. Like, for the past year, I've just been like bone tired, exhausted. Even today, where I got like maybe 4 hours of sleep, I feel okay. So that is such a massive improvement, because apparently a lot of my focus and motivation are tied to not feeling exhausted. A lot of my ability to interact socially is tied to not feeling exhausted. It's pretty cool, y'all. And Ritalin is not, it's a common one for kiddos. It's not necessarily a common one for adults. So, of course, you should talk to your doctor about this. But if you're finding that, like, Adderall isn't working for you, because that's the one they typically prescribe for adults, and y'all know it was not working for me, it's totally okay to be like, hey, I would like to try Ritalin or Concerta, because Adderall is one type of stimulant, Ritalin and Concerta are the other type of stimulant, and not everybody does well on the same stuff. So Adderall apparently typically works really well for adults. It doesn't work well for me. It basically makes me manic, and that's not, you can't have that. I'm not saying that lightly. I'm not somebody who uses mental illness lightly. Like, I was feeling manic. And the Ritalin, I feel upbeat, I feel energized, I feel smart again, I feel social, like I feel really good, and that makes me happy. I'm really hoping that this course will help me with the anxiety and the depression, because currently I'm not having problems with the social anxiety that I had been having for the past few years. And I think part of it was because with the ADHD and the exhaustion, my brain was smashing words together into faux portmanteaus, and that didn't make any sense to anyone else. So I would take two similar words and smash them together, not on purpose, but because my brain couldn't decide which of the two synonyms it wanted, so it would just smash them together and it would just come out and it would sound like I didn't know anything. Only I was slick enough to make me sound like I was clever, people would think I was way smarter than I actually am. My brain doing that work. But I was never able to like mesh it good like that, because I was so exhausted that it just wasn't clicking, you know? And my memory was like garbage. My short term was garbage. My long term, my recall wasn't so good. I was really starting to doubt myself and my knowledge, which, when you've put as much time into art and studying art supplies as I have, that's my big seller, you know? And that was terrifying me. I was really questioning what my place in the art community would be if I could no longer contribute those things. So, you know, there's plenty of nice. The world always needs more nice, of course, but like, nice ain't gonna pay the bills. We all know that. Plenty of half decent and all the way decent artists out there. Where I had kind of for years worked hard was like this vast. See, my brain was trying to do massive and vast into mass. This vast library of knowledge and experience and research, and it just wasn't coming to me anymore, which made videos recording and talking, whether I was doing it live or whether I was doing it in post, it was awful. Like, it was like I was struggling so hard. So it's really nice that I feel like this is definitely a big step in the right direction. It allows me, I made a phone call today to a stranger, and I didn't have social anxiety, and it was about a work-related thing. And between getting kind of screwed over in the past, so I have a policy where if this is our first time talking, if I don't really know you, I don't want to discuss things over the phone. I want it in writing, because I have actually had Skype conversations that I've had with companies. They took everything I said that I would do, because they'd led me to believe that they were interested in hiring me to demo the products. They took everything I talked about, all my ideas, and gave them to a different artist, and then acted like they didn't know who the heck I was. So I don't do stuff over the phone for the first time ever. Like, I just don't. I want it in writing. But we had already communicated in email. It sounded like I was what they were looking for. So I was more than happy to call them. And without that social anxiety clouding my brain, making me anxious, making me doubt myself and my expertise, I think the phone call went quite well. And I think I sounded professional and confident, which is the goal, you know, when you have all that education and all that experience and you actually really like teaching people how to do things. Confidence is really important. So I'm feeling pretty good about it. I was warned that the efficacy might decrease over time. We'll see. That's okay. We'll play it by ear. I like that it's not making me manic. I like that basically, not today because I'm exhausted, but in general, my brain is moving at a little bit faster than the pace of real life, but just enough that I'm like one step ahead and I can be funny again. Oh, I missed that so much. I was turning into a lump. And then I would over caffeinate so that I'd have the energy and then I'd feel sick. It was not a great situation. So that's why I don't like using just, are you getting work done as a metric for adult ADHD? I really think quality of life, I really think how you feel about yourself, how you feel about the work that you're doing, those are all important because I could robot that stuff. I have forced myself to work through migraines many times, you know? Like, that doesn't mean I'm not ADHD. It means I'm good at forcing myself to work. Those are not the same thing. And whether you're a kid or you're an adult, if you can't trust your brain to pull knowledge, to recall knowledge, to trust what you've heard from someone, like when it comes to oral directions, as a kid, that was the bane of my existence. I'd hear it, I'd be paying attention, and I'd forget. So I'd have to take notes. And like, I was the only one taking notes on where the teacher wants your name and your date and the subject matter. Like, no one else had to do that, you know? But I had to do that. Otherwise, my brain would just be like, no, you can't trust me. And I appreciate that I can actually trust myself again. And Joseph and I have been talking. He was encouraging me to resume my Louisiana recipe comics. And then some other people are like, yes, we like those. Please do those. So I definitely feel inspired. I love doing those. Those were a lot of fun. I mean, I like doing Kara, but like those are like just like they're easy enough. I get to draw food and they're in black, white, and red, so they're fun and they've got a pop of color, but they're not this big involved thing that takes forever. And people like food and I like food and it represents my culture and a lot of people don't understand my culture. So I want to get back to doing that. I think that is pretty awesome. I need to like sit down and do the red beans one because that one's easy. I'm probably going to make red beans tonight. You know, I make red beans all the time, and that is a staple. That's a good one for people with no money. You can stretch that out to forever. And it's also a good one for people who maybe they don't like with ADHD, you know. So I also want to do an ADHD cookbook at some point. I think that would be really cool with 3 different types of recipes. I think I've talked to y'all about this, but I want to do the Louisiana cookbook first. And then I want to do the ADHD cookbook. So we'd have simple recipes, we'd have recipes for bulk, and we'd have flavorful, interesting flavors recipes because I found with myself and other people with ADHD, you either, especially people that have to cook for themselves, you either fall into one of 3 categories, you know, or you have like decision paralysis. Like, and they're not a sponsor, but I really like doing Blue Apron. I did it for a few years. I'd like to get back on it because it took deciding what was for dinner I didn't have to decide. I mean, I decided at the time of picking recipes, but that night I wasn't stuck with decision paralysis that paralyzed me until it was too late to cook anything. Oh, we're eating ramen again, hooray, you know? So we also tried HelloFresh, and I think I tried another one, and I don't like the recipes are boring, frankly. Like, they're very Americana, no flavor, in my opinion, whereas Blue Apron had, for the 2-person menu, it has more exciting recipes than for the 4-person menu. But the 4-person menu allows for leftovers, and sometimes leftovers are your good friend. But going way back, I've noticed that people with ADHD, especially people who have to cook for themselves or cook for others, you fall into one of 3 camps where you are best served either with super simple but tasty recipes. And a lot of us were not actually taught how to cook by our parents. I think what it really is we were too busy to necessarily to want to stick around the kitchen and watch someone laboriously demonstrate how to cook. I learned how to cook from Mountain Brown and from watching YouTube videos, and from then later after trying, like for years, trying stuff and figuring stuff out on my own and trying out recipes I found online and learning from that and doing Blue Apron. And then I'd ask my mom how to show me how to cook certain things once I had this really established cooking base. But she didn't teach me how to cook because I didn't want to hang around the kitchen while she was cooking. I was on the computer playing Ragnarok, you know? So I think super simple recipes are a really helpful thing for anybody, really, but for ADHD folks, maybe we have lost track of time like I'm doing right now, and oh, I need to crank something out real fast. What's a really good, tasty, easy, healthy recipe? Oh, watermelon, mozzarella, and balsamic. That's a great lunch. Something like that, you know, something simple. Some folks really like cooking in big batches and then you eat just that for the week. I can't do that. Although to be real, we cook a lot of rice and we cook a lot of grits and then we just put things we like on top of it. So those are really good basic staples. It'd be like making a big batch of noodles and then having noodles 16 different ways. So those can be really good variations to keep it interesting. But like gumbo and red beans and rice, those are things you make a lot of. They taste better as the week goes on. And you can stretch them out to make them last even longer if you need to. So that way you did all your cooking at the beginning of the week. You don't have to worry about it for the rest of the week. You just go to the fridge, pull something out. You can even meal prep if you want. That would take over my whole fridge. But you could meal prep it and then just pull it out and reheat it and you'd have a healthy home cooked meal. And then the last one for me, what got me to love food after my childhood was strong flavors, particularly flavors from cultures that I didn't grow up eating their food because it just wasn't accessible. That made me fall in love with food and flavors and enjoy cooking and eating. So that's why I think those three sections would be really beneficial, because you've got, and then you can always mix and match from what you need. But I don't want to like give away my pitch, but sometimes, like I've said in other videos, it's helpful to kind of talk about plot out the ideas. I miss hanging out in person with comic friends and being like, hey, what do you think about this? Blah, 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 blah. And they can point out like some ideas or some flaws. Like the other day, Joseph and I were talking about the Louisiana cookbook, and just talking about it actually helped me create a timeline, an order of operations that I want to do the recipes in, because like, and not just recipes, but also activities. So for example, I want to do a short comic about going crab catching, and that leads to boiling your own seafood, which leads to shrimp cocktail, or diverts to seafood gumbo, or diverts to crawfish etouffee. So you have this like order of operations, and being able to talk about it with somebody else and get passionate and get excited about it helped me figure out what I was doing. And that ties back into last week's topic where we were talking about comic community and how the loss of a community and the loss of a network can actually be horrifically detrimental to the artists who remain. That is an example of that. I was a stronger writer when I could sit down and talk my ideas through with somebody, write an outline, and then get to work. That's how I've always worked best. I used to write a lot of flash fiction and poetry when I was in high school and middle school, and I always had friends that I would send my stuff to and get critique from, and we would polish each other's work. And I've also talked about how it can be hard for me to start those relationships anew, especially as I'm getting older and I know people are busy. And like, frankly, I could read your poem, no problem. I could read your 5-page comic script, no problem. Please don't send me a 30-page comic script right now, you know, unless you're like the friend of mine who knows who she is, who has stepped away from comics. If she wants to send me a 30-page script, she's always welcome to. Or I have another friend who does D&D and likes to draw, and if she wanted to send me her 30-page comic script, I would make time for it. But otherwise, I feel like I will say yes and intend to do it, and then it never happens, and then I've let them down. And what I like to do when I'm beta reading someone else's stuff is I actually like to live text them as I'm reading it, which is, that depends on your personality, because I like when people do that to me too, but I also like when we have a Google Doc and they just comment it up, because then I can give it some time and think about it and then come back to it. I don't have to like take notes or feel like I'm addressing everything. So it really depends on how you like to work. See, something else I like about the Ritalin is even though my brain jumps all over the place, I can actually remember my prior train of thought and be able to return back and link it and explain why these are relevant. gosh, I miss that. That was one of the things that made me kind of brilliant sometimes, is I could have these like really disparate ideas that made sense to me but not to other people, and I could link them in a way that was really cool. Like that can make you a storyteller. It also made me very good at writing speeches. And I lost that, and I felt so foolish and stupid, and I'm so glad to have it back. So anyway, you can tell like I'm happier, I'm more excited, I feel more comfortable again, and I hope this lasts. It just feels good not to be exhausted and not to have to phone in my emotions, because I would feel things, but I was so tired that I had to like amp up my emotions so that they'd register, and people would be like, oh, that's just depression. Look, I've had depression. I've talked to you guys about that. This was something. It was ADHD. I was totally worn out and burnt out, and I just did not have it anymore. And I basically at that point lost all the structure that had once cohesed, had once like formed a net that held my day together. So I'm grateful actually to be able to be on medication again. I wish my treatment as a kid had been focused more on asking me if I'm happy, and asking me if school is easier for me now that I'm on medication, and asking me if I'm getting along with other people better. I wish that had been the focus. But hey, if you are currently younger and going through that, or recently went through that, like you're in college and you recently went through that, let me know if they've gotten better about that, because I've been told they have, but I want to hear like your experiences. And I know doctors are all different, and it's really important to find one that you like. But if doctors have generally universally changed in that regard, then I'll quit harping on it. But if they haven't, then I'll keep harping on it, because I want them to change. I would like, in my beautiful, magical, fake world, the doctor who is the hard ass, the one who doesn't really believe in ADHD or thinks this is laziness or whatever, maybe they're watching this, they catch it by accident, a patient sends it to them, and it finally clicks. You know, like, you never know what kind of positive impact you can have. So me saying things, it's always with the hope that the right person who needs to hear it, who's new to the channel, who doesn't watch anything else, they hear it and they start to just think about it and maybe eventually come around. Because it can be a really wonderful thing when handled correctly, and when you feel like your doctors care about you as a person and your happiness, not just your productivity. And the best benefit to me is feeling like my personality came back, because I thought she died. I thought she died in 2015 with like the last time I really battled with depression. I thought she was just gone, and I just kind of accepted that part of me had died. I didn't even think to attribute it to untreated ADHD and exhaustion, but apparently that's what it was. So, you know, if you're seeing that, if you look at me and what I've been through and you see yourself and you haven't talked to a doctor about the possibility of ADHD, please consider doing so, because I suffered through that. I mean, Joseph was with me, but this is my brain. He can't be in my brain. I suffered through that alone, and I tried BetterHelp, and they didn't even do anything. And if I'd realized and had access to medical care at that point, I would have done it sooner, and my life could have been better sooner. You know, I could have been me sooner. And if I can spare somebody that time, then I would like to. You know, there's a lot of channels where they talk about the science and the neurology behind ADHD, and that's great. A lot of them aren't doctors. I'm not comfortable with that. I always will recommend books that some of them are doctors, and that's different, but the ones who aren't doctors, you know, please take it with a grain of salt. Take what I say with a grain of salt. Talk to your doctor. I'm not an expert. I am a human sharing her experiences. But that's why I tell you guys about all the wonderful ADHD books I've read, all the ADHD books or adjacent books like Messy, where they reframe how we see ourselves so we can love ourselves again. That's why I tell you guys about that, so you can do that research. You can get to that point on your own journey, and you can talk to your doctor with your words. You don't have to parrot my words. I mean, if you see a lot of yourself in me, let that be your invitation. So I'm really happy that things can get better, because I'd given up. Wow. I had given up on that person. I thought she died. I mean, y'all, I've talked about it, but until you live it, you don't know. So if you are living it, you don't have to live it. So please talk to your doctor about it. There's no shame in it. You know, most people would never have guessed that I'm ADHD. And that's why I'm very open, and I mention it a lot, is I want to normalize it, and I want more and more and more and more people who have those experiences, who see themselves in what I'm telling you guys. I want them to be able to love themselves and stop beating themselves up and stop thinking they're lazy or unmotivated or whatever horrible things we've been told about ourselves, and talk to a doctor and learn to love yourself and value yourself for what you have to offer, because you do have stuff to offer. Like I was telling, Joseph and I were talking the other day, and the number one thing I hear when people are talking about ADHD is how hyper someone is. Oh, that little boy has ADHD, he's running all around. You know, no one ever says, or I've never in my life, other than Messi, heard someone say, you know, my wife is a wonderful artist, and I really think a lot of her creativity comes from the fact that she's ADHD. Or my husband is this really kind, generous, empathetic soul, and I think a lot of his empathy comes from growing up and being picked on because he had ADHD, you know. People have started to find those ways to talk about autism, and that's wonderful, but people don't talk about us like that, and that's one of my dreams. Sorry, y'all. I care a lot about it. That's why I talk about it so much. I've had too many friends who hated themselves for a long time because they thought they weren't good enough and they thought they were broken, and they weren't. They were wonderful people. And the world just not always so kind to us. So that's my goal. That's why I am very out about it. That's why I call myself an ADHD comic artist. That's why Kara is coded to be ADHD. I mean, Lilliputians would not diagnose it necessarily. It's not necessarily a bad thing in a Lilliputian, but she's coded to be ADHD. And I want people to see themselves as that, accept themselves as that, and love themselves as that, because it is part of us. Our brains are made differently, and I think they can be made wonderfully, and I want us to be able to love ourselves for that. So anyway, I gotta go do the chill stream, I gotta stop crying, and I gotta go drink some water. So I'll see you guys. Hey guys, happy Tuesday. So I'm finally sitting down and writing out the calendar for this week. Tuesday is a little late in the week, but it's not too late. It's better than Wednesday, which is where I was at last week. And I like having a calendar in the background of my videos because it gives some context as to when the video was recorded. And I particularly like this for vlogs and unbox and swatch videos, since often information can change as time progresses. It becomes better known or easy to access, and this provides little useful context. Happy Tuesday. So May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and as you guys know, I take mental health pretty seriously. I have been very open about having ADHD, my accommodations for ADHD, my struggles with ADHD, the depression and anxiety that sometimes come from ADHD, and my journey to finding better mental health and resuming medication. And that takes an incredible amount of courage, because still in the US, ADHD is considered fake. It's still considered not real by many people, especially many much older people who don't think they know anyone who has ADHD. But it's more common than you think, and increasingly more adults are going out and seeking a diagnosis and getting diagnosed with ADHD, and are able to begin forgiving themselves, loving themselves, seeking for and asking for the accommodations they need, getting the therapy and the medication and the support that they deserve. And I think that's fantastic, and I will continue to use whatever small platform I have to help make ADHD a normal part of everyday life. So one of the things that always kind of bums me out is that when you are out and about and you hear people talk about ADHD, they treat it like ADD, there's a squirrel, like that, or oh, they're so hyper, they must have ADD, or gee, he was running around in circles in the parking lot, must have ADD. In general, when it's talked about in public, it's still treated as a pejorative and a joke, and it's my mission to help change that. As someone who struggled under that stigma all throughout school, despite being a model student, which I bring up to point out that you can be what everyone says they're looking for, and they will still make fun of it. There is no good enough for some people. So don't beat yourself up trying to aim for some standard of perfection that doesn't exist and is unfair to you, because there will always be people who you just can't impress. And I don't say that to depress you, but to free you. You don't have to jump for them. You don't have to dance for them. You have to love yourself. And that means taking the time you need, taking the accommodations you need, and doing things in a way that works for you. And that babe totally made me lose my train of thought. So if you are new here, if you're not familiar with me, I'm Becca. I'm a 35-year-old woman. I have ADHD. I also have anxiety and depression that stems from childhood trauma, but is also related to my ADHD and how people have treated me over the years. I am a comic artist and illustrator. I'm self-employed. I do a lot of gig work, and I also teach. I have taught people how to table at conventions for a really long time. I'm the co-founder of the blog, How to Be a Con Artist. I don't know why my brain forgot about that, but it did for a second. And for 10 years, I ran the Natto Soup Studio Art and Process blog. I have a beautiful webcomic, 7-inch Kara, about a ADHD coded girl named Kara that I hope you guys will read and love. And if you enjoy 7-inch Kara, I hope you'll reach out to me. I have 2 degrees, a BA in art and an MFA in fine art, and loads of schooling under my belt. And I'm here to tell you that ADHD doesn't just look like hyper. ADHD doesn't just look like disorganized. ADHD looks like passionate, creative, innovative, intelligent. You are those things. No matter what other people may have told you in the past, no matter how they might have treated you in the past, you have that within yourself, and you are those things. And I believe in you. So, I try to say this message every day. I try to live this message every day. And I try to help erase the stigma behind ADHD. And I try to help people see that you can be ADHD and an amazing, wonderful, valuable person who can enrich the lives of those around you every day. We're an asset to those who employ us because we're creative, we think out of the box, we're amazing at problem solving, but we do deserve the room and the space to be ourselves. And sometimes that means we're a little bit quirky. So anyway, this May, this Mental Health Awareness Month, I really encourage those of you who think you might have ADHD, who are struggling with juggling it all, who feel exhausted, who feel depressed, who feel overwhelmed, who feel anxious, those of you who struggle with being called lazy, who struggle with executive dysfunction, who struggle with rejection sensitivity disorder, for those of you who are struggling, whether you are diagnosed or not yet diagnosed, I implore you, as someone who struggles with this and has struggled with this herself, to please seek the help that you deserve. And if you're having a hard time finding a doctor who takes you seriously, to please continue searching, to continue reading resources, and to continue doing your own research until you find someone who can help you become the person you are truly. I was born to be a creative, outgoing person with a bubbly personality, but dealing with having ADHD and not always being able to trust my own mind and dealing with social anxiety gave me massive anxiety and depression for a lot of my life. I was not able to be who I was meant to be. I wasn't able to flourish. I wasn't able to use the unique skills that I had been born with, the unique passions that I've developed over the years. I felt so hindered and so hobbled, and I really felt like there was no hope for me because I was already giving my life my best. I was already putting in everything I knew how to put in, and I was really anxious and angry and frustrated, and I hated myself. And I tell you this because if you see yourself in that, if you're a hard worker who seems fairly organized, but in your head you still feel you can't get it together, if you feel exhausted all the time, if you feel overwhelmed by the world around you, you might have there's lots of high-functioning ADHD, but you might have the kind of ADHD that people don't diagnose because you fit society's standards of productive enough. But I'm one of those people too, and I'm here to encourage you that you don't have to burn yourself out. You don't have to grind yourself down to be able to do those things, and that you can bring this up to a doctor and tell them that you're struggling with these things, and you can ask to be tested for ADHD. To me, I want to help as much as possible remove the stigma that's been attached with ADHD. Sorry, that's Bixby, which I use a lot, but she thinks I'm talking to her all the time. I want to help remove the stigma that ADHD is just for boys, that ADHD in marriages looks like the wife taking care of the husband like he's her child. Because often ADHD women, even undiagnosed, tend to be attracted to and date and marry ADHD men. And you don't have to spend your whole life taking care of another adult like that. You need to look out for and take care of each other. It's okay to say that you need them to look out for you as much as you look out for them. I know this because not in my own marriage, but in my family relationships, I always fall into the mothering role because I don't need as many accommodations as my other family members, but it eats me up and it burns me out, and it makes it very difficult for me to ask for what I need. And if you're in a family where they treat you asking for accommodations like it's a joke, which happens in my family, you have every right to say, I cannot do XYZ unless we make these accommodations. You have the right to ask for frequent breaks. You have the right, if you're overstimulated, to request downtime. You have the right to ask for what you need, especially if it doesn't hurt others. It's not too much to ask, and you don't deserve to basically kill yourself, to burn yourself out, to serve other people. And I know that with certain personality types like my own, we have a tendency to do that because it kind of distracts us from our own problems. But that's not fair to you. You deserve to be happy. You deserve to be loved. You deserve to find acceptance. There are ADHD coaches out there. There are psychologists and psychiatrists who specialize in the treatment of ADHD, so they'll get you. There's amazing books out there, although you have to search, because a lot of those books, that's where I get the whole, a lot of women are expected to take care of their ADHD husbands. That's a lot of the ADHD books on marriage right now. It's written about taking care of your adult husband, man, which is not fair to your partner, and it's not fair to you, and I wish they hadn't written those books that way because it's perpetuating some really harmful problems. But I do really like the books written by Ned Hallowell. Highly, highly recommend them. He's a fellow ADHD. His kids have ADHD, so he gets it. He's not just talking about it in a pejorative sense like some of the books about childhood ADHD used to be. When I was growing up, my parents constantly sang the refrain that the jails are full of people with ADHD, that judges hear nothing but that as an excuse. That is what I grew up thinking I was going to be and that I had to avoid. But I'm here to tell you, ADHD people are everywhere. You probably know several people who have it and don't even realize it. There are artists, musicians, singers, writers, the people who invent things, the innovators. And if you're looking for a little shot of wonderful in your life, I highly recommend you read or listen to the audiobook Messy, because that was the book that honestly helped me recontextualize my ADHD and see it as not just something that affects my brain chemistry, but as an asset. And that makes me a valuable ally and a valuable employee and a valuable person altogether. So there are a lot of resources out there for people who have ADHD. And if you are kind of struggling and you're still looking for a doctor, I highly recommend you avail yourself of those resources and that you find others who have ADHD and you can talk about and compare your experiences. In fact, if you're looking for it, I have a vlog series called My Life with ADHD, where I talk very candidly about how it has affected me, how it affected my childhood, how it affected my adulthood, and the accommodations I was taking at the time. So I'm currently on Ritalin, and I like it. I tried Adderall, and I didn't like it. So if you are looking for a medication, keep in mind that not all ADHD medications help all people with ADHD, because each of us has a unique brain. We were all made differently, and it's more than okay to tell your doctor what you don't like about that medication and what it does and doesn't do for you and what you're looking for from it. It's not going to be an end-all be-all, but for me, it helps me focus. It helps me find that motivation, and I'm not exhausted all the time, which has been such a huge difference in my life. The past couple years, especially starting with COVID, I felt like a toy winding down. I felt like I was breaking. I'd known I'd had ADHD since I was 5. I went off medication at 15. I got 2 degrees without medication, but I hit a wall in my life where I lost that external structure, and I lost the support systems that were encouraging me and inspiring me to make art. And I started making things in a vacuum, and that ground me down quickly. As an extrovert, I need that encouragement. But going on medication and finding the right medication for me helped me find that again. And it gave me hope, and it gave me excitement, and it helped me deal with the social anxiety, because I don't have to worry about my brain mushing up words, dropping words, saying the wrong thing. I don't have to worry that I'm going to give a cranky response because I'm actually awake. So I hope that's inspired you guys to look at your life, to look at your struggles. If you're someone with ADHD, I sincerely hope that you're working on loving yourself and loving what you have to offer. And I hope during Mental Health Awareness Month, if you are in a safe situation where it's moderately appropriate to do so, it would mean a lot to me if you would tell people you have ADHD, so that we can normalize this. Not every work situation presents that. It is not always advisable to necessarily out yourself like that. But if you're in a safe situation and it comes up, it would be wonderful if you would mention that, and we can help normalize having ADHD, because increasingly they're diagnosing more and more people, so this is more common than people think. I wish you guys a happy Mental Health Awareness Month, as happy as possible. I love you guys, and I'll see you guys later. So speaking of reviews, I finally got around to the unbox and swatch review for the Beam watercolor paints that I received a while back. I hope you guys will check out that video, but I do have to say I was quite delighted with the set that I received. As with almost everything reviewed on the channel, the set was purchased out of pocket by me. So you guys asked for check-ins of the crystals. This one just seems to have sedimented out. Seems like there's some crystals growing on the base. We made the mistake of probably having the string too long, etc., etc., etc. And then down here is our pink, our blue, and our yellow. We weren't able to set up a week-long time-lapse for these, so I apologize if you were looking forward to that, but I'm going to try to check in daily with the progress, but I am not keeping the log. Today was a really humid day, so dry times on these watercolors was a little bit longer than I had hoped, but that allowed me to get some housework done in the interim. I do look forward to the day when I can have an L desk set up and I can just switch stations while I'm waiting for something to dry, rather than having to step away for a while or pick it all up and then try to reset it up the same way all over again. But I enjoyed swatching these. I really enjoy the care and presentation that goes into Beam watercolors, and I hope you guys are looking forward to that unbox and swatch. then once I finished reviewing the beam paints, I was able to start painting this illustration. So this is going to be my field test for the Paul Rubens iridescent paper. I don't know why it took me so long to get the original unbox and swatch out. It's been done for like a month now. I guess I just kept forgetting about it over more pressing things. So sometimes I get really excited about something and I hurry up and I review it, and then it takes me forever to actually do the work part, the releasing and scheduling it part. But even though it was rainy tonight and we had some humidity issues, I enjoyed working on this illustration. This one's a smaller one. Usually I like to work at like 9 by 12, but due to the size of the paper that I had ordered, this is more like 5 by 7. So I hope you guys will check out the full field test for this video and let me know what you think of it. The little spoiler though, the little iridescent flecks in this are just not as impressive as I really would have hoped. I was really hoping they would do more for the actual color and vibrancy, and like kind of like pearl paper does when you're doing prints at a convention. Pearl paper adds so much depth. Didn't really happen with this. So that was about it for my Tuesday. It was a quiet, fairly uneventful Tuesday. Nothing wrong with that at all. The medication is definitely helping me focus better and focus for longer periods of time. It's not such a struggle to get things done. So I'm really happy about that. That is the effect that I really wanted from it. So I hope you guys had a good Tuesday, and I'll see you guys again tomorrow. Having kind of a bummer day today, so we took a break and went to the West Bank version of the farmers market, and on the way I actually got to rescue a turtle on Ormond Boulevard, so I call that a win. It was a cute little red-eared slider. But sometimes it's just nice to get out and look at all the beautiful fresh produce. Alright guys, so I am not actually smart enough to be able to talk and sketch anymore. I can actually talk if somebody's talking to me, but I can't just talk to myself and the camera and sketch. I don't know why. So what I'm going to try to do instead is chit chat and swatch. So these are the colors from the Daniel Smith live stream I did not too long ago. So these are all really pretty things. And I want to go ahead and make a color map. And I'm doing this in this weird format because I'm also trying to grind out some Instagram content, you know. Always be working, ABW. So we'll see how that goes. But the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add some water to these to see if they reactivate. I did reactivate them from the ceramic pan, but I've also found that sometimes it's easier to get paints to reactivate from ceramic, and then you can't get it to reactivate in like mass form like this. So this will be a good secondary test, a good way to see it. So I've been kind of thinking about some ideas for, you know, chat topics. I thought about doing a story time series on my worst experiences at conventions, because there are some real hoo boy tales there. Might give that a little more time to simmer, because some of those experiences were kind of frustrating and traumatic. Conventions just really attract a wide variety of people. I've met some of the most wonderful people that I'm still friends with now at shows, and I've also met people that I've had to report to con staff because they started stalking me at the show. So it could go either way. I even had somebody, so I'd stepped on glass at one point, and my foot was all bandaged up, and I was at Anime Southeast tabling, and I was coming back from teaching a panel, and this guy stops me, and he thinks my foot in a slipper, because that's the only thing I could get around the bandages. He thought it was a cosplay, so he stomps on my foot as hard as he could, which I don't know under what circumstances that would be okay ever, but he did that. And I was actually there with a couple of friends, and the guy friend I was with went and reported him. So don't worry, we didn't just let that slide, but he was kind of your average, generic. It's hard to give a description of him, let's just say that. So I guess that's that tale. Anime Southeast was just like that's like a whole story time all by itself of just bad experiences. It was held at like Wilderness in the Smokies, I think it's called, which is like, it's a hotel, and it's got a water park in it. And I guess that could make for some really neat cosplay photos, but it made the hotel very expensive, and people weren't really there for the con. They were mostly there to go hang out in the water. So it wasn't exactly the best show to like sell stuff in the artist alley. Ooh, these are all like very, very reactivating, which is, you know, better than Mayan Blue. And I think doing like a story time series about my convention experiences might not be a bad idea either, because I'm mostly done with anime cons. I'm probably still going to do a couple maybe, but I feel like that chapter of my life as like a convention artist is over, and I mostly just want to focus on doing like indie shows and craft fairs and comic shows. Mostly because it's just more in line with the kind of work that I want to do, you know? I make comics, and while I enjoyed my life to an extent as a commission artist, I'd rather focus on making comics and teaching comic panels. I did okay talking. I think once I get a subject, I can get going. And I think I could like tighten up an illustration. I just don't know if I could do like conceptualization while talking. It's a little too distracting, and I end up producing art that isn't even mediocre. It's just not good at all. And I usually do my fleshing an illustration out phase. I usually do that on the computer because that allows me to resize all the heads that I've drawn 6 sizes too large. Maybe not 6, maybe just a little more than twice as large, but y'all know what I'm talking about. But maybe it's also something I need to like practice again. I used to be pretty good at it, and then I started recording my videos with no audio and then redoing the audio or doing voice work in post. So I kind of lost that ability for a while. So maybe if I practice, I'll be able to regain that ability, because I actually do think sketching storytime videos would be fun. I think it'd be something I'd enjoy. I'd really like to do it for streams. That's actually why I do the sketch request streams, and then I do like chibi style. It's because it's something I can do really easily without having to think too much about it. So maybe something like that again, because it kind of recaptures that like whole hanging out and drawing with somebody vibe that I think a lot of us have missed. So I'm going to let this dry, and then I'm going to go over and just fix up those mass tone swatches. So I guess another con story, although it's not so much as a story as it's like something that happened not just to me, but was like happening to a lot of artists for a while, is while conventions were like an in-person thing, you would get these groups of teenagers who were or not just teenagers, it was just groups of people trying to scam artists in the artist alley. And there were several different scams that were kind of making their rounds. The only 2 that really affected me were that I knew were scams from the get-go were the very common one where, you know, you have a group of people and all of them are touching and messing around with stuff on the table, and you're kind of distracted, and they're asking a lot of questions, which is good, but sometimes they're talking about stuff that's not even on the table, and while they're doing that, somebody is pocketing small things like stickers. Anything that's not secured down could be liable to walk. I never really cared so much with the stickers. I mean, if you're going to steal a $1 sticker, I think that like says more about you, but you know, okay, you win. You got one over on me. Another, not a scam, but I mean, it happened, was that in artist alleys that weren't secured for the night, you'd get a lot of shoplifting. I had friends whose wire grids were just completely knocked down by the next morning because somebody was trying so hard to steal the prints off of them that had been like zip tied on. And these are wire cages that had been zip tied and then clamped to the table. So they weren't loose. They weren't like in danger of falling on their own, except, you know, when you tell the con about it, they're like, well, you know, those wire grids, they're not really secure. Another really common scam, and this one is particularly hard on artists who are tired, who are busy, who have a lot of work or have ADHD, is the scam where they'll pay for something that's like $5 to $10, and they'll be talking to you the whole time about something else. It could be their cat, or their friend will be talking about something else. It's always a non sequitur, not related to stuff at the table, because the point is to distract you. And they'll hand you the money, and while you're distracted and you're making change, they'll say, oh, I gave you a 20, and then they'll want to argue about it. So it got to the point where I developed this system where I would keep their money in one hand, close to me but visible, and make change while holding their money with the other hand, so that it was always very visible and very easy to prove how much I'd been given and how much change I owed them. That was, that's a funny one to bust, because I'd had people try and it'd be like, no, this is a $10 bill. And I'd smile and say it like everyone makes mistakes, because I mean, you never know. Sometimes people are legitimately just making a mistake. They're not really trying to scam you. And I don't ever want any of my customers to think I just think you're trying to steal from me, because I know the vast majority of you guys are not. But you do every now and then get people who, and then you see online, like when it used to be more popular to do vlogs about conventions, I would catch, because I would always kind of look up vlogs for conventions I'd been tabling at to see what people said about the artist alley, and I'd seen a few vlogs where people were bragging about scamming the artists. So I know it wasn't just an oops, all berries kind of situation. I knew it was an intentional scam. And then by them bragging about that scam, they're teaching other people who want to pull one over on the artist in the artist alley. Like, you literally, I'm not encouraging this, I'm discouraging this, but literally, if you want to steal from an artist, you could just print out their art onto stickers. Bam, you did it. You don't even have to pay admission into a con for that. So those are things I will not miss at all whatsoever. Those were not the best parts of the show, but they're kind of amusing to talk about, and you know, it's just part of doing sales. You run any shop, you're gonna have yourself those kind of situations pop up. It's not an anime con specific thing. And I'm trying to think of some good experience. I have had good experiences. I don't want it to sound like I haven't. Good experiences, though, are generally, you know, more low-key. When I used to do MTAC, I had some con customers who bought from me every year, were always happy to see me. They saved their commission money so that they could commission me. And they would, if I sent them with money, they'd go pick me up a coffee, or sometimes I would give them like half off their commission because I couldn't leave the table, you know. So there are definitely some really wonderful experiences. I've had people bring fan art that they'd drawn of Kara, which is always so, like, it always takes my words away, you know, because I'm so touched that A, they made it a point to come see me, and then B, they drew fan art of my girl. Like, it's such a wonderful experience. But I know those stories, while wonderful and good to hear every now and then, they're not quite as entertaining as hearing about the bad. So if you guys are interested, I'll try to work in some bad tales from the con circuit stories here and there as I go. It hasn't just been customers who were not the best part of the con. There's been cons where the con staff was awful. Oh, Louisiana May had some bad con staff, and MechaCon. Oh, I have some stories about that. The founder of MechaCon called me the B word in emails that should not have been sent to me, but were passed along to me because a couple of people on staff thought I deserved to know how I was being talked about behind my back. So, you know, and that was just, I was doing panels at the time. We were doing 3 panels for them, and AWA and many other shows' policy is if you do enough panels, you earn a badge. And we'd hit that mark for most cons, so I was just trying to negotiate with him some form off our admission because that's time we're donating. And he told me I'm ruining the spirit of the convention, and he told other people some very ugly things about me. So, you know, it's not just customers. Sometimes convention staff is not always the artist alley artist's best friend. So this needs to dry, but I had fun telling you guys a few stories about my time doing conventions. I've got loads more. If you guys send in questions, like prompts, it'll be even easier for me to do it because then I don't have to think about what you guys might want to know. I'll know what you guys might want to know. And if you've ever met me at a con, why don't you comment down in the comments below? I know I meet a lot of people at conventions. I will miss that aspect. I love meeting people, but I do plan on doing comic shows and, you know, like the Cherry Blossom Festival and like, craft fairs and those kinds of shows. So I'm not totally done with shows. I'm just stepping away from anime cons because I find that volunteer run shows, it's just very hard on everyone involved. I've worked as AA staff myself and I was an artist liaison, and I can definitely tell you that was hard. And some of the artists were very rude to me despite knowing that I was an artist as well and that I normally tabled at that show. So I've been on both sides of the table. I've been a customer and had artists be rude to me. I've been a tabling artist and had customers be rude to me. So generally my policy is just to be as kind and as professional as possible. So I think it served me fairly well, though it hasn't always worked out perfectly. You know, it's a better track to take than just being nasty to people. So anyway, I'll see you guys later. So this evening I worked on this watercolor illustration. This was drawn with red lead and inked with a Sakura Pigma FB, and this is on Fluid 100 hot press watercolor paper, which, while not as nice to paint on as the Stonehenge hot press, which I really like, it's still a really nice watercolor paper. It is very mild mannered. For a hot press, you don't necessarily have the streaking or the overly quick dry time, but if you find cold press has too much texture, it's difficult to draw on, it's difficult to ink on, you might want to try this paper because it kind of resolves a lot of those issues, while in my opinion still maintaining a lot of the character that makes me love watercolor. It's able to handle water decently well, although you wouldn't necessarily want to apply like a wash over it, because with the way hot press is, they use hot plates to press it after they finish making it, and that tends to make it a very compressed paper, and it's not necessarily as receptive to water as a cold press watercolor paper. So I actually have a video where I talk about the Stonehenge hot press versus the Stonehenge cold press, and I talk about those kind of differences. And I also have a blog post from the Watercolor Basics series way back in the day at natosoup.blogspot.com. I'll grab that for you guys and hopefully remember to put it in the description. If I don't put it in the description here, I'll put it in the description for this video, which may or may not go out to patrons only. We'll have to see. They do get the majority of my tutorials though. But I am almost finished with this piece. There's a few more things left to do on it. I definitely still need to do the gouache, but I'm pleased that I made good progress on it today. It dried really quickly despite it being relatively humid outside. So if you live in a humid area like Louisiana or Florida, hot press watercolor paper might be the watercolor paper you're looking for. Okay, so before I say goodnight to you guys, there's something I kind of want to talk about with y'all. And I've been kind of thinking about it all day, and it's been definitely kind of put a damper on my day. So I'm going to try to talk to you guys about this as delicately as possible. So this morning I woke up to the news that Jesse Hamm had passed away. And if you're not familiar with his work, he was a comic artist, but also he shared his knowledge quite freely online. He had a separate Twitter account just for his tutorials. He also had a Patreon. And while I've never had the pleasure, to my knowledge, of meeting him in person, we've chit-chatted a little tiny bit very publicly on Twitter, you know, general pleasantries. I've retweeted many of his tutorials because his resources were a huge help. And I also supported his work on Patreon because I really believe in what he's doing. I believed in what he was doing. The Patreon's still there. I think it is a wonderful resource. I guess I need to read through it and avail myself of that information before his wife takes it down, if she chooses to do so. I'm not really sure how that gets handled these days, you know, because so many of us have created this opus of work that when we pass away, and it's all online, when we pass away, it's either behind a paywall and no one's contributing to that because the person who is generating that work is no longer alive to make more work, or it's collected into a volume, or it always ends up morphing, whether it disappears, is taken down, or is collected in a new way. It ends up morphing. And to my knowledge, he is the first art educator that I know of who created this body of really useful online resources, and now he's passed away. It's not that he's stepped away from the internet. It's not that he's decided to take his stuff down. He is no longer here to update it or to maintain it. So I wanted to tell you guys about that because I feel like people who share resources, who create tutorials, who teach others, and don't necessarily ask a lot in return financially, and who do it very publicly to make it accessible for all, they don't always get the recognition that they really deserve. The number of lives that he has touched, whether he'd known it or not, has to be this astronomical number. I mean, he had 20K followers on Twitter, but people would share his tutorials to their own Twitter accounts. I mean, you know, retweeting them, not just stealing his stuff. And then I imagine, as we were talking the other day, I'm sure a lot of his stuff ended up on Pinterest with no credit whatsoever, because that's what people do. So that kind of brings up my first point. This is the first time in my life that someone who I had looked up to, who created work that I found very useful and educational, has passed away. And now there's this body of online, he has a Gumroad. And today I was thinking about it, I was like, oh, I'd like to buy the PDF of his work so I can download it, because while I have supported his Patreon for like 4 years now, I don't know if that's going to continue. And then part of me was like, that's really kind of gauche, because, I mean, it's a digital download and his family would probably see the money, but it just starts raising all these interesting, to me, questions about the works we create, how ephemeral they are online, yet still in many ways quite permanent, and honestly, how many creators, especially people who share educational content, are not thanked during their life. They're only remembered and talked about in their death. And today, people were singing his praises on Twitter and talking about what a wonderful person he was and what a gift he was to the community. And, you know, all I can think is that they should have sang his praises when he was alive to hear it. They should have said this publicly. They should have owned his influence on their work and his impact on his life when he could have heard that, and it could have meant something to him and to his family. And that's coming from a very selfish place here with me, you know. When I saw that he had passed away, I wasn't quite sure how to feel, because we've never known each other to my knowledge. I mean, I meet a lot of people at shows. I don't think we've ever met each other in person. But I've been a great admirer of his tutorials for a long time, and I used to highly recommend them to other people and suggest that other people back him on Patreon so they have access to his essays, which are really very excellent and quite thoughtful, and often open my eyes to new ways of thinking about comic art and comic composition. And I wasn't quite sure how to feel, because we've lost this force for good, but people didn't acknowledge his influence necessarily, not to the extent they are now, until he died. And that always brings up very strong feelings for me, as I guess some of you guys might imagine, because when I was trying to get into grad school, I made a promise to God that I would share all of the information that I learned, all the things that I learned as freely as possible. That was the deal that I'd made, and that's why I started the blog to begin with, and that's one of the reasons I did all those panels at conventions for years, because they don't pay you for that, as you guys heard earlier in today's vlog. And it's also why I share what I share on YouTube. That was the deal I'd made, and it hasn't panned out for me. It didn't do the things I'd hoped that it would do. It didn't open the doors that I wanted, or enable the relationships that I'd wanted, or grant me any esteem in the circles that I wanted to travel in. I am still a little Miss Nobody at most shows, even when it used to be when they'd hear that I was Natto Soup, that meant something, kinda. Usually what I would hear is, as I'm setting up my table at a show, and I'd overhear another artist being like, that's Natto Soup over there. She co-runs How to Be a Con Artist. I'm gonna do more sales than her. It was always like this weird competitive vibe. Sometimes people would come say hi to me, but it was the weird competitiveness that I saw more often, and it always kind of bummed me out, you know? But it's strange seeing someone you don't know personally, but that you've always admired for the works that they do, for the community that you both share, when they pass away. Because I have no anecdotes to share other than that I had enjoyed his tutorials and found them very useful on Twitter, that took an immense amount of time for him to do that, to the point where he had a separate Twitter account, you know, basically foregoing some of the notoriety, some of the popularity, and some of the accolades that would have come from just sharing it on his personal account. He had this private account that people could separate account that people could opt to follow if they didn't want to follow his personal account. And he also had this Patreon that, you know, art Patreons, when your commodity is information and education, it's a little bit of a harder sell than when you're selling items and art. But it did quite well considering, and it just really stirred up some thoughts for me today. You know, in comics, we don't have a lot of awards, but we do have some awards, and those awards do carry some prestige. You have the Ignatz Awards with SPX, you have the Eisner Awards, which are a really big deal. Even to be nominated is considered quite an honor. And then the different, like, comic festivals often have their own awards. Like, there's the Kids Read Comics Awards that A2CAF would give, and there's the Mocha Fest Awards, but there's never any awards for people who make the resources that inspire thousands of artists to pick up a pencil and tell their stories. There's no recognition, no accolades, no thanks, no awards, and no ceremony for the artists who generously give up their time, often a significant chunk of their time, to create these things that don't help themselves. Not really. They already know that information, although teaching things helps solidify it, helps you learn new things, and it does help you appreciate it. But they are doing more by putting this out into the world for others to access than it does for them in many instances. And there's nothing to recognize that. And I was talking to a friend of mine, I mentioned it on Twitter that, you know, we need something like this in the comics community, and people seem to really resonate with that idea, which is great. We all act like we love that idea until it comes time to thanking the people who taught us, and then we're like, oh, I don't remember. So we'll see, but I'm hopeful, you know, just because I've gotten burnt doesn't mean that it's not something worthwhile, and not something that's feasible, and not something out of the realm of possibility. I have gotten into so many internet arguments when just asking people who use my work to just, like, cite it, like, just refer, like, if you were writing a paper, you have to cite the resources you use, but if you're making a YouTube video, you can quote whatever and not have to link it in the comments below. Which I'm not super, I always link when I'm referencing stuff. If you guys check my description, you'll always find the links down there. I don't always add them in the video itself because the screen gets kind of cluttered, but it's always in the description if I'm using outside materials. When I wrote the blog, I always linked my sources, often many sources for nerds like me who get obsessed with the subject and then they want to deep dive. So it's painful to see things recirculating without credit given to at least one of the sources where the idea came from. And I know we can be better, and I know we should be better, and that's one of the reasons I bring it up, to, like, make it, okay, no shade, but if you go to art school, you are taught to credit and to be honest about your inspirations, to talk about your inspirations, to not act like art is made in a vacuum, to accept, embrace, and honor your inspirations. And maybe not all art schools do that, but certainly my art school education taught me that. And I think many people who are learning from the internet don't pick up that nuance. But don't wait until the people you admire die to admit that you admired them. If you can, tell them today, especially if they're a friend. I am fortunate to be friends with artists who I greatly admire and respect, and I made it a point to tell a few of them today how happy I was that they're in my life and that they're alive today, because, you know, when you lose one important voice, it does make you aware that for any reason, people can step away or you can pass away at any time. I could die tomorrow getting hit by a bus. Today, for example, because of all this and all these thoughts and all these feelings that I was having, I had trouble focusing on my work. So we went to the farmer's market, and on the drive there, I saw a turtle trying to cross the road on Ormond Boulevard, which is a fairly popular road that connects Airline Highway, which is very busy, to River Road, which is very busy, and it goes through this neighborhood with like this big promenade. It's like so it's not like, it's like a boulevard, right, where you have one way and then like a median or a neutral ground, and then the other way, and there's a bike lane on either side. And I saw this turtle trying to cross the road, and there was a bunch of cars behind me, but I put on I pulled over and I put on my hazard lights, and I dashed out to help that turtle, because, I mean, I could see this guy was clearly struggling to get across the road. He's a red-eared slider. He's fast in the water, but he's not fast on land, and he was kind of scared. He peed all over my shoes. And I didn't move him all the way across because I wasn't sure if that's really where he was going. I put him in the median, and all I can do is hope that someone else with a kind heart will pick him up and bring him the rest of the way. But honestly, while I was doing that, there was a bunch of cars behind me. I was holding them up. Somebody could have plowed into me. This is Louisiana. You get people who just don't care. There was a guy on the Hillbogs Bridge, which is this tall suspension bridge that connects the East Bank to the West Bank of St. Charles Parish. And I guess he was a construction worker, and he was over the edge, and somebody clipped him with their car. He went into the Mississippi River, and they're still looking for the person who clipped him. So, like, you know, you can die at any time. Now, I will say, with the turtle, everyone was actually very patient with me. There was no honking, and the guy behind me actually waved at me, so thank you for being cool. That is often not my experience, but I'm grateful when it is. But, you know, just you can go at any time. The people you care about can go at any time. The people you admire can go at any time. The people who motivate you and bolster you and have encouraged you and provide information that you wouldn't otherwise have had access to can go at any time. So be honest. In my opinion, own your inspirations. Own the people who have inspired you. Thank them. Admit it. Be public about it. There's no shame in learning from someone else. This is why I rail about the notion of the self-taught artist when we have the internet. No, honey, you're Googling things. Somebody else is teaching you that. You're self-motivated. You're self-directed. You're choosing your own pace, but you're still using resources that somebody else created. You didn't invent this. So when you don't own those things, not only are you doing yourself a disservice because you're cheating yourself of this possible connection that could be so worthwhile, you are cheating the person who took the time to make those things out of the majority of the value of having made those things, i.e. possibly making a connection with someone who needed that material. And then you're also cheating people who are in the same position as you and just want to learn. So, I feel a little bad, like, using this to make a point, but it just kind of bummed me out because while it was beautiful to see so many people singing his praises, and they were well deserved, I followed his work for a while, and many of these people, I'd never seen them reblog any of his stuff. So to me, if you value the work that somebody is bringing to the table, whether it's comics or resources, just throw them a retweet every now and then. It costs you nothing, but you got people on Twitter who think that sharing anyone else's art to their timeline is like a no-go. Their Twitter is a portfolio and they will never share anybody else's art to it, but dang it, they will share all of the weird anime hot takes they can think of, which I'm like, you do you, but also that does not add up, because if you're trying to have a professional Twitter, sharing other professionals' art is not unprofessional, but weird anime dunks at 3 in the morning? And I mean, this also ties into a topic I've talked about before in these vlogs, where people will spend more time complaining about something than they'll spend time praising something. They would rather spend time dunking on an artist they don't like, dunking on somebody who does something they don't like, than spend time being grateful for the people who are legitimately good actors, who are legitimately trying to make the world a better place, who genuinely care and who aren't asking for a whole lot and aren't making crazy demands. And it's hard to want to create things when you know that's what you're facing, you know? So a friend and I are talking about a way to make online art educator awards with a focus on comics possible. I think I really want to do it. I really want to be involved in it, which is why I'm hesitant to talk about it, because often if I talk about cool things online, someone else beats me to the punch with it. I don't know if it's the collective subconscious, or they're just like, Becca, you're not really making much progress with this idea, yoink, while I'm busy doing all the field work for it. But one of the things I would like to make sure of is that it's not connected with a con, like a convention. And the reason for that is, like with the Ignatz Awards, you technically don't have to be there to submit your comic, but it's voted on by, in most years, in non-COVID years, it's voted by the people at the convention, whether they're tabling artists or they're attendees. And not everyone can afford to go to SPX every year. It's actually kind of expensive to go to it if you don't live in that general area. Most of us can't just take a train, like a 1-hour train ride in. A lot of us are coming from like the South, where we don't have anything except for Staples, which is almost as far a distance for some of us, right? So, you know, it would be unfair, in my opinion, for a comic educator award to be based on a con that the educator maybe can't afford to go to, it can't afford to go to politic for themselves, and would not be able to afford to be there to receive the award. So ideally, I think it is best served as an online thing, because then that makes it fairer for everyone who does create that kind of work to be eligible to do their own politicking and to receive the award. And I do think there should be, I think some people were thinking I was talking a cash award. Y'all. I do not have that kind of money, okay? All right, we're trying to get the NATO scholarship back up this year for March 2022. So I'm not sending out cash prizes, but like it would be really nice to be able to send out a plaque or something, because the kind of people who do this work, and I'm thinking of I have several people in mind who are wonderful people and so hardworking and so underappreciated. And I think they would really appreciate even a cheap bowling trophy, you know, so with their name on it, and in recognition for your sacrifices towards the advancement of the comic arts, you know, especially because a lot of people are not making a living off of Patreon when you do that kind of art education. But I know Jesse Hamm will be missed by a lot of people. I think the comic world especially, will be a poorer place without him sharing his knowledge as freely as he had done in life. I don't really know what the fate of his Twitter and his Patreon and his Gumroad are going to be. So this is not meant to be like scoop-worthy news, and this was already publicly shared on Twitter, so I'm not scooping anything, okay? But it's sad when someone who is part of your community, especially somebody who honestly had such a positive impact, passes away. And it just gets you thinking. So anyway, if there is a creator or an educator whose work, whose resources have helped you start your journey, or helped you hone your craft, or helped you start selling your stuff at shows, or helped you start selling your stuff online, or helped you find courage in yourself, or made you feel less lonely while you were working on your own comic projects, or inspired you to start making zines, anything like that. If there's somebody out there who's done that for you, or multiple someones out there who've done that for you, popular, unpopular, big or small, new or old, please take the time to reach out to them and tell them that the work that they've done has been meaningful to you and has been helpful to you. Please do that while they're alive to appreciate it, because honestly, you don't know how close some of those folks might be to quitting that day, thinking that what they do doesn't help anyone and has no place in this world. And you don't know how your kind comment, your sincere well wishes, what that might do to help restore their faith in themselves and in what they do. And I mean that genuinely. I've gotten comments in my chat, I've gotten comments in emails from people, not as often as I'd like, because we'd all like it all the time, right? But on occasion, you know, especially on a day where it's just been a real bad day, sometimes I'll get a comment that just fills the gas tank back up. I was on empty, thinking of walking away, setting it on fire, and I'll get a comment from somebody, and it makes me be like, no, you know, I'll stick around. I'm not happy with the view count. I wish it was higher, but somebody's getting something out of this, and I'm glad I can share what I know with them, because that gives validity to my education, to my experiences, and makes me a part of the community. It allows me to give back. So yeah, anyway, I hope you guys have a good night. I hope you guys will think about what I said and take it in a good spirit. It just, his passing and then seeing everyone suddenly talk about how much they loved his work made me wonder why we wait until the end to say something. Why do we have to wait until someone's dead to say kind things about them, to tell people how much we like their work? Why does it take their death for that to happen? Say people realize that might be the last chance they have to say it, and they want to take that opportunity, and they want to send them off into Valhalla on the best note possible. Let's take it like that. Let's give it the kindest benefit of the doubt. Because that's probably what it is. You know, people are just already thinking about the contributions that he made, and they're ruminating on that, and then they're feeling grateful for all of that, and that's what inspires them to say it today. But we don't have to wait until someone has left this world to talk about how much their work means to them. So I hope you guys have a good evening. Like I said, I hope you guys take what I said in the best spirit possible and use it to inspire kindness and generosity in your spirit. And the more you encourage the people who've inspired you, the more likely they are to continue to make things that inspire you. And there's a possibility, not necessarily a probability, but there's a possibility of friendship there. That's how people network, is they say, hey man, cool comic. Oh, thanks, I really like yours too. It's not a guarantee, but you'll never have that if you don't reach out and try. So again, I hope you guys have a wonderful evening. I'll see you guys tomorrow, Thursday. I like how I have to remind myself the day of the week. It's COVID. All days are the same day. And on Friday, speaking of education and hanging out, on Friday, I am very strongly inclined to resume my live streams, and I'm planning on doing a watercolor flower live stream. I'll probably just paint one, but maybe eventually I can work my way through all of these. These are from the How to Draw Flowers series, and I'd always intended to paint them for you guys, but I think it'd be cool to hang out, talk about painting, talk about art, and paint some flowers with y'all. So if you're a patron, you You might have to dig in the archive to find those, but you should have the line arts for that. And anyway, I'm looking forward to seeing you guys on Friday. I'm glad my energy levels are back up enough where I actually want to do live streams because I missed that. And I know Friday is not the best day for you guys, but if I do it on Saturday, then there's a whole nother bunch of people who are like, that's my D&D night. So it's like, weekend streams are just hard. But I'm glad you guys are having fun playing D&D. And yeah, hopefully I'll... So earlier today, Joseph and I went out to look at yet another house, but I did manage to finish up this illustration and get some wash onto the page. I'm pretty happy with how it turned out, and I have no idea what I'm going to do with the footage that I captured for it, whether I'm going to release it publicly on YouTube or just to Patreon. I'm really not sure yet, but I hope whatever I decide, you guys are looking forward to it. Later on in the day, I went over to Luling to help my mom with some garden stuff. She had some tree branches that she wanted to remove, and pretty much all of her daylilies were in full bloom. They're so beautiful that I wanted to share them with you guys. Some of her irises were also blooming, and one of her hydrangea bushes had the most beautiful palms that I wanted to share with y'all.
This is all.
Yeah. That is very...
I'm going to start over there.
Maybe we should have somebody else come do it because it involves electrical lines.
I'm not going to cut the line. I'm going to cut around. I'm going to cut over here. I'm going to cut over there. I just don't want the weight.
And what are you using? How many inches is that blade?
I think it's like 4.
Where'd you get it?
Amazon.
Amazon?
It cuts.
It will kill.
Probably.
It probably would. I shouldn't joke.
It's got a safety.
That's
safety
good.
Switch on it.
Yeah. Okay, so that tiny, ridiculous chainsaw actually did a pretty good job, and we were able to trim a lot of the trees around the house. Now, those really dangerous branches over power lines, we're actually going to call the electric company and let them deal with that, because it's just too intertwined to be safe for us to handle it. So I wanted to try out some of the super granulating colors in a situation similar to how I might actually use them. So I'm doing some moody, atmospheric, wet into wet tests to try them out. Hey guys, good evening, happy Thursday. So earlier today we were back on the house hunt. I don't know about you guys, but it is always a really stressful thing. I am so super ready for it to be over, and yet it never seems to end. So tomorrow we've got another one. In fact, tomorrow I needed to go get blood work done, and we weren't really supposed to go look at this house until Monday, but then she was like, can we get you in for 10:30? And I was like, sure, I guess. And the reason that is kind of an issue is because when I'm having blood work done, I'm not supposed to eat or drink, which means I can't take my Ritalin, or have coffee. So we're going to be looking at a house, and I am going to be probably bone tired, unmedicated, with no recourse to kind of revive myself, because I have to turn around and go get blood work done after. So that's fun. I'm excited about that. In a way, that's kind of a good thing, because it shows me that I actually have, I guess I'm finding the experience of being medicated again enjoyable. It makes it easier for me to do many of the things that I need to do. It doesn't solve all the problems in the world. That is not the point. I know my glasses are always lopsided. My ears are actually one slightly higher than the other, so they're always just terrible looking. Blame my ears. Sorry, I'm tired. It's been a really long day, and my eyes are really bothering me, so that's kind of distracting me while I'm trying to talk to y'all. And if I avoid eye contact, it's because as a kid, I have my left eye is weak and would just kind of go wandering off, and I was made fun of for it a lot, and it's something I'm actually very sensitive about, so it makes me kind of hyper-focus on it. So anyway, I guess that shows that I find that the Ritalin is actually benefiting me, that I'm concerned about being off of it, but I'm also concerned about being not caffeinated, because for years I have used caffeine as my as the stimulant that helped me get work done. But basically what I was going to say is this has been the first full week plus a little extra that I've been on Ritalin, and it doesn't solve all the problems, and that was never the expectation, but it does make me feel awake when I'm supposed to feel awake, and that makes everything else much easier for me. It's easier for me to be good-natured, it's easier for me to be easygoing, it's easier for me to follow trains of conversation, it's easier for me to rely on my short-term memory because my short-term memory has my back for once. It's easier for me to focus, it's easier for me to get work done, it's easier for me to feel like being sociable because I don't feel exhausted all the time. And I talked about that earlier this week, but May is Mental Health Awareness Month, so I am probably going to be talking about ADHD a lot this month because it's important to me, and normalizing it is super important to me. And as more and more people come out and say, hey, I have ADHD, I want to kind of reframe the dialogue so that it is no longer this thing used to describe people who are flighty and spacey and overly hyperactive, etc., etc., etc. Some of those people don't even have ADHD, and some people use it as kind of a joke, you know. I would like to kind of reframe the conversation to also encapsulate how wonderful we are and how creative we are and how passionate we are. So I would like, when people talk about ADHD, to also talk about the good things and be aware of the good things and the positive attributes. And so that's where I'm going to try to kind of go with this month is just talking about the great things about being ADHD, the great things about being a creative person with ADHD, all the things we have to bring to the table this month. Because I feel like there's enough conversations during Mental Health Awareness Month that are very depressing and sad. And I think a lot of us with ADHD have heard so much of that. We are very, very saturated with that. So I don't want to contribute to that. I don't like spending all my time thinking about that either. And B, I want other people to hear these things. And maybe if you like me and you like what I do, then you can maybe start thinking of those traits that you like and associating them with ADHD as well. Because while I am not the one unique face of, homogenized face of ADHD, not every person with ADHD looks the same way. And that's another thing I really, really want to impress upon people, is that there is so much diversity in race, in age, in gender, in abilities with ADHD. You probably don't really know what ADHD looks like. You would probably be surprised by what ADHD looks like. So that's what I mean by talking about it, by normalizing it. Hopefully I can add to that cadre of things you think about when you think about ADHD and help change the narrative about it. That's my goal. I mean, I'm not the only one who's capable of doing that. I'm certainly not in a position of popularity with a platform where I could do that. But I feel like if you don't try, nothing ever changes. So I'm in the second week of the Instagram challenge. Tomorrow at some point, because tomorrow is going to be kind of a crazy day between house and blood work, and then I'm doing a stream in the evening unless I'm just totally wrecked from the lack of Ritalin and exhaustion. But actually I'm going to eat and take my medicine as soon as I get my blood work done. That is the plan. So I should be good to go at 8. Words. I do need to cram in some time to talk about the Instagram challenge and talk about my experiences. But something I have definitely been noticing this week as we're getting more in the swing of it is that most of the people commenting on my work are not even humans. It's bot accounts trying to push me to pay to be promoted by these other I want to say channels, but you guys know what I mean, other accounts. And I also think a lot of the views my art is getting is just bot views, and because my likes and normal human comments are really down compared to like my normal updates where I just update when I have something arty to share, and I don't really worry about reels, and I don't really worry about IGTV, and I only do stories if I feel like it, you know, like using it like a normal person might. And even that was down from where I was this time before reels, was introduced, and even that is down from where I was in 2015 when I was doing a lot of fan art. So just in general, I feel like my social media is just doing worse and worse and worse and worse and worse, which if I wasn't an artist working from Louisiana, always on the lookout for more paying work, I wouldn't be bothered by it at all. But when you live far from hub places, you do need some internet traction in order to make ends meet. It's just very helpful for that. Oh gee, what else? So Saturday we are probably going to spend all day in Gonzales, and I will probably end up with a migraine on Sunday because we are helping to clean something out, and I have a pretty bad dust allergy that usually results in a migraine. So I'm going to wear a mask as long as I can stand to, because we're going to be outside, so it's going to be hot. But well, we'll see. I really hope I don't get a headache. I helped clean a family member's room while they were in the hospital, and I was so sick the next day. And I'd come home and showered immediately after because I know I'm allergic to dust. So that's just always exciting. But I haven't necessarily been doing, no, it's not fair. I've been working on art. I have art to show you guys. And I've been working on, or I'm starting this thing. This is using the My Trina watercolor rounds. So they're the 80% cotton, I think 20% something else. And I'm using them to kind of test out the atmospheric granulating properties of the super granulating supervision colors. Because one of the reasons I like these super granulating colors is I think they would make for really good comic back. Like, not every panel would have a background like this, but like intense moments of thought or intense moments of concentration or intense moments of expression or emotion. These could be really useful at very effectively conveying that sort of inner feeling. So I wanted to kind of test them out in like a field test kind of scenario, very similar to how I might actually use them. So, you know, just an ink drawing of Kara. I'm going to watercolor that after. But for these, you know, what I've been doing is I've just been applying a lot of water to it and then dipping it in wet to wet so that you get the really nice granulation effect. Because if you just apply it like you would regular watercolor, you lose a lot of that cool granulation. So this is the first one that I've made this much progress on. I'm going to wait until they're all inked and have that background before I actually paint them, but I have a couple more inked, and I'm just kind of trying to do at least, or trying to draw and ink at least one a day. So I feel so guilty when I don't have like a new piece of art every day, which is not a sustainable way of making art. And you just end up making art for social media, which, while it doesn't necessarily sound bad on the surface, if you're a comic artist, it kind of means you're not necessarily making comics, especially if you do longer form comics, right? Like, that does not scale super well to the demands of social media. So I need to work on breaking that, and I need to work on getting back to working on longer form projects where I don't get the immediate gratification. And my husband was telling me about, I think it was a blog post that Rob Steinzinger wrote, and he's talking about the donut reward method. And this is actually something I used to use a lot. It wasn't with donuts. It could be with things I really wanted. So in my example, I had these Phoenix Wright art books, and I was basically like, I can open them once they get past MTAC 2018, I think. And that was all the prep. And I never opened them, despite really wanting them and wanting to open them and loving the art for Phoenix Wright and having successfully completed the convention and doing quite well at that show. I never let myself have the treat. So this is the way the donut method works, right? You have this thing you need to complete. You're having trouble completing it. So you go out and you buy a donut and you set the donut there and you look at it while you're working on the thing. And then once you've completed the thing, you can have the donut. And in general, I think that is a great way. I mean, I think in American culture, let me know if this is in your culture too, but I think we're expected, especially us creative types, we're expected to do everything through intrinsic motivation. You have to want it on the inside, which is, an extent, yeah, somewhat. You have to. It's a lot of self-effort. But there is a lot of needing something extrinsic, something from the outside, whether it's sales, whether it's people talking about your work, whether it's likes, whether it's retweets, you know, that's seen as like, oh, you're doing it for the wrong reason. I've heard enough of that myself, so I'm speaking from my own heart here. And the donut method takes away the need for social media hug box, puts the control back on you. You get to decide if you get that donut or whatever your treat might be. And yet you still get that extrinsic motivation that just honestly we need sometimes, especially when we're burnt out. I love it as an idea. I have practiced it for years. I have failed to practice it because I never let myself have the thing that I'm supposed to have afterwards. I would not do that to a kid I was raising. I would not do that to a student. I would not do that to a friend. I would not do that to my husband. I don't even do it to my cat, but I will cheat myself of the promise. So I think it's a cool method, especially, I think I may have done a blog about it in the past, but I've talked about it in relation with like using stickers in your planner to reward yourself for accomplishing tasks in the break the chain method. So that kind of ties in with that. I highly recommend you check out the post in question. I'll try to remember to link it in the description for you guys. But in general, his creative advice is usually really good and really well grounded, and he's one of the 2 members of Lean Into Art, which if you don't watch Lean Into Art, I highly recommend you do. It is free on YouTube, so there's no reason why you can't enjoy it, but it's full of really down-to-earth, legitimately good art advice and practice. So I do recommend you check out his blog. I thought it was real funny that Joseph was bringing that up like it was like a new trick to me, and it's like, oh yes, I'm very aware of the trick. I have somehow managed to cheat myself of the trick, and therefore it doesn't always work for me because I know I will not let myself have the thing I'm supposed to have. I know I've talked to you guys about using meals like that. Like, I'll be like, oh, I have to finish XYZ. I can't get up and eat until I accomplish that task, which is not, don't do that. That's not good. That's not fair to you. But as someone with ADHD, I was so afraid that if I got up and broke my concentration and left the task, that it would be way harder to get back into it, which is often the case, but y'all, you gotta eat. And sometimes the reason you can't concentrate is because you're starving. So, you know, I know I just have like a funny brain, so I know that stuff that is normally good advice, sometimes my brain warps it into something that isn't what it is supposed to be. But anyway, I am pretty tired. I wanted to say goodbye to you guys before the day was over. I know we still got 2 more days in the week, but legit, I do not know how much energy I'm gonna have on either of those 2 days. So they might just be like maybe some art, maybe some flowers. Who even knows what that's gonna look like? But I did want to like check in with you guys before the week was over and talk to y'all about it. So yes, I'm still working on the Instagram challenge. I am working on the super granulating things, and there's just some like family stuff that potentially might come up. Not bad family stuff, but stuff we need to help take care of that might make it really hard for me to make art or make it really hard for me to do vlogs. I don't know. So I'm just putting that out there. I'll do my best to do my best, but family is a priority, so they do come first. Anyway, I hope you guys have a great night. Hopefully I'll see you guys tomorrow. Hopefully we will have a fantastic stream tomorrow, and happy Mental Health Awareness Month. Sometimes learning what you have, learning how that affects you can actually make your life a whole lot better. So honestly, a lot of people who have ADHD in the ADHD community, when someone is like, hey, I found out today I have ADHD, we usually congratulate them because it's your new life now. You know what's up, you know what your brain is, now you can make choices that are educated choices. So it's like, congratulations, welcome to the family, which I think is a really wonderful way of, it's a very positive way and a very warm way of dealing with something that for many of us was treated like a pejorative when we were growing up. So I hope that's something we can continue to do, because that's really kind of beautiful. So anyway, I hope you guys have a wonderful evening, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye guys! Hey guys, happy Friday. So I started my day off with a couple of the super granulating watercolor tests. So for this one, I am testing out green and brown. And then for the next one, I am testing out green and blue. And like I said yesterday, this is just kind of a chance to see how these might work in a real comic sort of situation where I would be using this as kind of an easy background that's still very atmospheric. And I apologize for the blurriness, but here is a little bit of a highlight reel of me working on a sketch and the inks for an upcoming super granulating watercolor test. Don't know why that is so blurry. I do apologize for that. It's the way I record these, sometimes it's hard for me to see if the camera's in focus, so sometimes they end up not in focus. So Joseph decided to cut the lawn this afternoon, and I asked him if he could bring Bowie out with him, and we've never tried this before, but it really doesn't seem to bother Bo at all. It's a kind of quiet manual reel mower, so it doesn't make a lot of noise, and I think as long as Joseph doesn't like come super close, you know what I mean, like Bo doesn't really seem to care, which is kind of nice because it's nice to be able to like let him be outside and hanging out with us while we're doing stuff, you know. But Bo's also very used to being on a leash and walking on a leash, so if your cat doesn't like being on a leash and isn't used to being outside with his or her people, it probably isn't a good idea. But if you've got a younger cat, you can start leash training them. I mean, we started leash training Bowie when he was like almost as soon as we got him. So he's very used to walking on a leash. He's used to being on a leash. He's used to being outside with supervision, you know. So I think with cats, they're very trainable as long as you're willing to start as soon as they've started their relationship with you. And you find ways to make it pleasant. Like, look, he's just out there nomming grass because that's what he enjoys. He's helping cut the grass by eating it. And I know most people are like, cats do that when they have a sick stomach. Yes, that's true. But with Bowie, I think he just likes the taste of grass because he will just manger the grass whenever. Anyway, it kind of makes a nice little family picture, doesn't it? And here's some highlights from tonight's watercolor stream. So we talked about painting a watercolor tulip, and I'll talk about this a little bit more in a minute. If you guys are interested in this walkthrough, it's live on YouTube. I actually walk you guys through my thought process. I walk you through the color choices that I'm making. So even if you don't have these exact colors, you can kind of understand why I'm doing what I'm doing, and you can kind of formulate your own color choices. So if you want to, you can check out the stream. It is live, although it's, oh gee, what's the word? It's not live technically. It's available, but it's not quite live. But hopefully we can work on the wild rose next to it next weekend. Hey art nerds, happy Friday. So we just wrapped up our watercolor painting stream and we actually managed to finish the tulip. So hey, not bad, an hour and a half. That's honestly for watercolor, that's not bad because of the dry times. So I did turn on the fan a few times, the AC was going, the dehumidifier was going. So, you know, not the worst. I really enjoyed this stream. I felt like we had some really good conversations. I felt like we were able to really talk about the materials we were using, but also talk about some mental health issues, which, it being Mental Health Awareness Month, I think that was fantastic. You know, I really enjoyed that. So tomorrow we're headed to Gonzales. Today was an interesting day. We went to go look at a house, and whoever took the photos for this house deserves an award because the photos online were beautiful. I thought we were gonna really have to fight for this house. The reality was very different. So we get there and our realtor's waiting outside, and that's fine, she usually is. When we go inside, the whole place reeks of cat urine. Joseph and I are both wearing masks, so at first it's like, oh, it smells a little ammonia-y. Look, by the time, we didn't even look at the whole house, all right? By the time we were ready to leave, it was so strong, okay? Especially downstairs, I have a cat. I know what cat urine smells like. I know when you can get it out of stuff. I know when you should just throw that stuff away. This place had laminate and tile floors for the most part, so maybe it had carpet and they pulled it up. I don't know, but you can get cat urine off of floors. All right. This was so pervasive. Every room, I think it either got into the subflooring or it got into like the sheetrock and the drywall and the studs. It was bad. Now, supposedly a cleaning company had come the day before to clean the place. Oh no, that place was filthy. So whoever took the pictures and put them online and made the place look bigger than it was, way cleaner than it was, and of course we don't have smell-o-vision on the internet, so you know that wasn't there for us. But they had this like screened in back porch. It was totally screened in, which was kind of a shame because it would have been a beautiful porch otherwise. And the pictures didn't show that it actually had a screen door because I guess they were allowing the cats out there, which is fine, there's nothing wrong with that. But look, I have a male cat. He was neutered as soon as he was old enough to be neutered. He still sprays sometimes when he's startled, all right? That is not that, I mean, it's stanky, it's nasty, but this was like way worse than that. I think they were keeping multiple unspayed male cats in that house. So, and here's the kicker. It wasn't like this house was a cheap house. They wanted $325 for, it's a 4-bedroom with like no yard at all. It's an all right neighborhood. It's not a bad neighborhood. That house would need a lot of, I mean, we've been looking at a lot of houses in the $275, $300 range. That's a lot of money, I know. In Nashville, if they would be wanting $750,000 probably for a house that size. Probably in that condition too. So this is way cheaper than Nashville. But I'm going to enjoy watching that house on Redfin because I think it's going to be sitting for a while. People, unless somebody buys it sight unseen, because the pictures online are great, but the smell inside was a lot. There are 2 smells I absolutely cannot live with. Cigarette smoke is one of them. My dad died of lung cancer when I was 22, so that's a rough one for me. And nowadays, I get real bad asthma from it. And pervasive cat urine. I'm not talking dirty litter box. I'm talking about like you leave the place and you're smelling your clothes like wondering if you picked up that smell. So we have in general avoided a lot of the rougher houses because we're not really in the position to flip a house. We don't have that knowledge set. We don't know a contractor that we would trust to not take advantage of the fact that we don't know anything. We're not equipped for a flip. None of the surviving family members in our family, while some of them are handy, none of them are flip a house handy, okay? So we haven't seen like the worst of the worst, you know. We're not equipped for that. We've actually passed up a couple of houses that theoretically could have had really good potential because they were in really bad condition. I would think you would have to like tear those walls up and clean them. I don't even know. Man, good luck. Good luck. Whoever gets that house. As we were leaving, someone was slow passing because the housing market right now is crazy bad. Very competitive. There's a lot of inflation. There's a lot of older millennials who are tired of living at home with mom and dad, who have a couple kids who are looking to buy a house. We're in the same position as them minus a couple of kids, you know? So, like, it's very competitive right now. And I feel like people are so willing to get out of mom and dad's house that they will just take on a massive amount of debt, because I guess it doesn't matter because you got all that student loan debt anyway. It's not like you can claim bankruptcy on that. I don't know. But it's really competitive for moderate family homes with 3 bedrooms right now. And so, you know, we've been trying to check out anything that looks like a fairly good lead that isn't in terrible condition. So we haven't seen the worst of the worst, but we have seen a few really weird houses. We've seen some very dated housing choices, like the house was built in the 70s and then they never ever did anything to it. Like the carpet's the same, the bathrooms are the same, shell sinks with the fake marble. I have a soft spot for that because the house I grew up in had those shell sinks because it was built in like 75. So, you know, if it was in good condition, I might leave it. But we've seen some interesting choices, and we're not even doing the deep dive. There was this one house that looks like a 1-story, and then you find out it has a whole secret second story, but it's not a good second story. It's like these tiny rooms with no windows, and they wanted a lot of money for that. So that was a definite no. Because it's like, we're not even going to want to use that. There's no windows. The rooms have, like, the ceiling is super low. And we're short people. So, and the ceilings are still, like, I'm feeling claustrophobic in there. And I'm 5'3". So that was also a no. But it's been a journey. And we're still on that journey. And today it was so bad that I kept laughing about it in the car. Because it was just, like, so bad. Oh, that smell, y'all. Like, anyone who has experienced that smell, you know what I'm talking about. And if you haven't, you're probably like, oh, it's just a little cat urine. You can get rid of that. You can get rid of a little cat urine. The house had been soaked in cat urine and allowed to dry. That kind of smell. Like, yeah, it was a lot. So after that, I was supposed to get blood work done, but my doctor didn't call it in and didn't send me the paperwork that I apparently need. So we made the trip to the hospital for nothing. But we did have lunch with my mom, and then I had to drive back to Luling to pick up the paperwork. It is a mess. So that was my Friday, but we had a lovely stream. I enjoyed it. I appreciate everybody who came and hung out. I know Friday nights are not the best night for everybody, but Saturday nights are also not the best night for everybody. So, you know, as I'm kind of getting back into streaming, we'll figure out a good weekendish night that works. Maybe Sunday nights, I don't know. But anyway, I don't super know what tomorrow has in store. Probably not a whole lot of art because we're going to be doing some cleaning, so I'm probably not going to feel like doing a whole lot of art. So like last night where I kind of bookended things, and kind of like every night I guess I'm just going to like try to bookend things in case subsequent night is not so great. So May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and guys, as I have said before, you're going to hear me talk about this a lot. So I saw on Twitter tonight that people are talking about Trump having snorted Adderall, and I'm not here to comment on the veracity of that, but what I am going to comment on is true or not, as someone with ADHD, as someone who has people she loves who are on Adderall by prescription, I'm very tired of seeing Adderall, Ritalin being used as a slang for easy meth, or half-legal meth. I'm really tired of it being treated like a joke. I'm really tired of people using it as a way to dunk on people they don't like, or to say something ugly about people they don't like. I think there are better ways to point that out. Like, there's better ways to phrase it, and Twitter is never the place for the nuanced take. All right, but I saw Adderall was trending, and I was like, okay, and I clicked it because I don't know. I think part of me had hoped that like some celebrity or someone with an actual voice came forward and was like, yes, I have ADHD. I'm on Adderall. Like, I was hoping that it was like a moment of somebody cool being like, I'm ADHD too, and people being like, that's cool. Like, I am dumb because it's Twitter, and I should not hope for that when I'm looking on trending topics. And I was not disappointed in that way. So yeah, and people were saying that he like ground it up and snorted it, which is, anyone with ADHD, diagnosed ADHD, has probably heard that kind of stuff being said as like a way to slam on somebody. And I'm just like, it's Mental Health Awareness Month. Can we just stop with the ableist takes for like 20 minutes? Can we just not be gross? Like, you know, I had a problem when people were like fat shaming. Was it Trump that they were fat shaming? They were fat shaming somebody, and it just bothered me because I have a lot of fat friends, and I was just like, they're beautiful people. Like, don't use that as a pejorative, you know? And now they're like using my disability as like a slam, kind of, and I'm tired of that. And like, could we just not, in May, could we just not, you know? And I know sometimes I can come across, I feel like I can come across as like harping on this a lot, but I also feel like if people like me don't say something, then, because like for years when I was younger, I was ashamed of it. I didn't feel secure in saying something about it, and I was ashamed of myself. I thought I was those bad things, so I thought I didn't have the right to say something. But I don't feel that way anymore, and I feel like if we live in shame, then we're not going to make any progress. And it doesn't happen as often as it happens to my friends who are people of color. It doesn't happen as often as it happens to my friends who are fat. It doesn't happen to my friends who have other disabilities, but it does happen. And pretty often, to be honest, and it's treated like a joke, like look, squirrel. Ugh, I hate that. I mean, there are people who are like that. I'm not slamming them. I hate that that's the joke, you know, like we're treated like a joke, and that, you know, it bothers me because in Mental Health Awareness Month, I think talking honestly about mental health issues is important, but I also think those of us who have disabilities, who are still living full lives and living happy lives, we should be able to talk about that, and we should be able to celebrate our victories, you know? And seeing it used as a junk is, you know, not fun. I'm so sorry about the buzzing. I don't know why Discord is sending notifications when I've turned off notifications, but it's doing it, so yeah. And it's actually very distracting for me because it keeps coming up on the screen, and I'm actually tired, and I'm trying to talk to y'all about having ADHD, and I'm actually struggling with having an ADHD problem. But that's just life, you know. Trying to regain my thoughts without having to do a million cuts. that just becomes extra work for me. Like, we were talking in the stream about how doing YouTube content can really lead to burnout. And part of it is because you make the art, and then you gotta edit the art, and then you gotta voice over the art, and then you gotta upload the art, and then you gotta write the description and the tags and the thumbnail for the art, and then you gotta promote the art. And even if you do all that, there's a chance no one will watch it. You know, it's hard not to sometimes feel burnt out from that, you know. I struggle with that. It was kind of heartening to hear that someone else struggles with that, because it's not something that's really encouraged to talk about, that you are putting in all this work. Not just, okay, I'm also doing that I tried an Instagram challenge. So, and I'm watching my Twitter kind of die. So social media and I are not the best of friends right now. I'm kind of having like a what do you want from me kind of moment, you know? Not with the people, but with the algorithms, especially with Instagram. Because it's like, I'm doing the dance you wanted. Why are you showing my content only to bots? So probably because they want me to buy some promoted posts, and I'm not doing that this month. That would defeat the purpose of the challenge. So it's been a struggle, because you know it's important not to equate your value as an artist and as a person with social media, but when you live in a place that is not an art or a comics hub, when you live in a place where these kind of jobs don't really exist, you have to make your own. You're very dependent on the internet. Not just for if you sell commissions. Like, I don't actually offer commissions, really. I would take commissions from someone I know really well, but I'm not soliciting for commissions. I'm not open for commissions, right? But I have a lot of friends who that is what they're relying on for their income. And frankly, if you're just polling your immediate area and you don't offer $1,000 commissions and you don't live in an area where people can afford such things, and you can't crank out 3 that month, whoo, good luck. So, you know, as much as it's important to remember your value as an artist is not necessarily tied with how well you do on social media, that there are many wonderful artists who do very poorly, and that there are very many problematic, awful people who are very popular. Not saying that if you are popular, you're problematic. Just saying there are very popular people who are also problematic. They are not necessarily linked. Although, oh, I'm so sorry. Her channel is really good, and I can't remember her name right now. It's Salem something, I think. Sorry. ADHD brain right now. I just can't remember. She did a video where she ended up talking about, it's a really good video, where she ended up kind of talking about how, to an extent, people like problematic people. They're interesting. They like to follow the drama. So you will see people do these really egregious things, and their social blade actually goes up after, you know? So I thought that was a really interesting video, and it kind of made me think, well, you know, you could do some really terrible things, and that might do it for you. No, I'm kidding. I'm not going to do that. That is not me. But I'll try to remember her name so I can share it with those of you who are interested. But I'm always into those kind of like thoughtful analyses of social media phenomena. And I mean, people will read like all the yellow journalism mags, you know, like the Star and the Inquirer, where all they used to do, I don't know if they even still exist. I haven't seen one around because I don't necessarily go to the grocery store all that much. But back in the 90s, I was on a very famous TV show. Now, back in the 90s, all those magazines ran was either Bat Boy Returns or some awful gossip about Princess Diana, or can't remember her name, so I'll not even mention it because what happened to her was really sad. Also, what happened to Princess Diana is really sad, but it was nothing but celebrity gossip. And sometimes it was true, but it was always terrible stuff like divorces and cheating, you know. And people bought those. They wanted to know what the gossip was. So, you know, this is not a new phenomenon. It's just, now anyone can be your problematic fave. That should be my t-shirt. Now anyone can be a problematic fave. So, anyway, rambly mess of thoughts. But I enjoyed the stream. I appreciate those of you who hung out with me. Monday, chill stream. Gonna put the voting image up. Want to do it tomorrow. Might happen Sunday. Not that you guys, well, okay, if you see the voting image and you see the vote and you are interested, please vote. I'm kind of thinking about making soap. Really kind of want to do resin again. We could always paint pots. And then there's the applique thing, which I like applique, but it's hard to make it a good stream, I feel like. It's very dependent on the conversation. So, and then we got to check in on the crystals, which I have not been showing you guys, but they also haven't done anything. Like, I like how it said, like, give it a couple days, give it 2 to 3 days. It's just nothing's happening. Well, we're not having much evaporation either, so that's part of the problem, is the solution isn't really saturating enough for the crystals to fall out of solution and start to grow. But Anyway, I'll see you guys hopefully tomorrow. And I hope you guys have a wonderful week. And I hope you guys are able to stay safe and healthy. And I'm going to continue to nag. If you can get the vaccine and you haven't, please get the vaccine. If you have the first vaccine and you've just decided you're done, you're not getting the second, please go get the second one. Keep in mind, we're trying to hit herd immunity, 85% of the population. We are all part of that 85%. There are going to be people who just cannot get the vaccine. So please, let's get the vaccine so that we can protect everyone. You know, it did not hurt that much. I did not get that sick. And I got it at Walmart. You can do it. I believe in you. See you guys tomorrow. Bye.